The exciting thing about service design is being able to zoom into touch points, zoom out to the organizational level, co-design with stakeholders, work with them and end users to help deliver value on the bottom line for the business. And in today's world, trying to meet those increasing needs of a growing population, that kind of mindset for any sort of company will stand a lot of businesses in good stead going forward. UI design, UX design, graphic design, service design. Seriously, man, what does it all mean? Following on from one of my last videos, which was UI versus UX versus graphic design, this video I wanted to look at service design and see how UX design fits into it and what they all mean. So I think a good place to start is with some definitions. So, user experience design, what is that? User experience design is any part of the experience that a user will have with a business or an organization across any variety of products. And it's always much easier to explain things in terms of a real world example. So for this example, let's look at something that everyone's pretty familiar with. How about public transport? User experience design in terms of public transport, it might be when you're looking at a printed timetable to see when the next train is. It might be when you go online to book your tickets. Or it might even be when you get to the station and you look up on those screens and you see and you have a look to see if there's maybe any delays to your train. Okay, so that's user experience design. Now, obviously, any of those, the digital parts of that journey, that's digital UX, whereas printed UX might be that printed timetable that you're looking at. They're all UX, it's all user experience. It's an encounter that a user has with the business. Of course, if you would take that printed timetable and make it available digitally, then that would suddenly become part of the digital UX. And in that case, you'd want to tell the digital team and make them aware that this part of the experience is now available online. That team would then go and sense check it and make sure that it aligned with all of their user experience principles and that there was a consistent experience with the rest of the digital UX. But that's kind of going off on a tangent. That's what user experience is. Any part of an experience that a user has with a business, that's UX. Really focusing on a moment in time or sort of a single touch point. So the next thing, what is service design? How about a definition for that? Service design, think iceberg. If UX is just the tip, service design is the whole bit beneath it. And if you want to put UI design into it, then UI design is kind of like the little bit of frosting on top of the tip, which is UX. So nice big metaphor there to explain it. But really what service design is looking at a set of problems that might be across an organization, across multiple touch points, not just digital, but it might be down into physical infrastructure. And taking it back to the public transport example, it would be looking at things like, for example, the design of the buses. Are the aisles wide enough to allow people on wheelchairs to get down them and actually access the service? Designing the service. It might be looking at the amount of trips that go out to different areas in a city. Are they meeting the growing demands of the people living there? Do we need to send more buses out to that area or to that area? It might be how people pay for their public transport. It might be questions around like, can people pay by cash? Should they pay by card? Should they have a token? Can we get facial recognition going? What do users think about that? It might be thinking about things like how the public transport company's data feed integrates with third-party products like Google Maps. Or it might even be looking at the trains and the buses and thinking about, are these going to run on fossil fuels or should they be running on renewables? These are all the kinds of things that you want to think about when you're working on service design. So if you think about it in terms of a definition, service design, it is that whole iceberg, whereas UX is just the tip and the UI is just that little bit of frosting on top. So that's what service design is. A little bit of detail, nice big simple metaphor, but I hope you get the picture. And so back to the main point of this video is, how does UX fit into service design and where's the line between them? And that's a bit of a challenge for a lot of people to try and really clarify the scope of service design versus UX design. And some of that confusion comes from the shared activities and the shared approaches that both of the disciplines have. For example, interviews, workshops, and prototypes, those are all three things that both of the disciplines actually take part in. They're all human-centered practices, but then if you look at service design compared to UX, while UX might be delivering also wireframes on the side and user experience principles, service designers will be delivering things like a service blueprint, customer journey maps, or even a service ecology map. And those are the kinds of deliverables that will help a service designer think about an organization from the top down across all of the different touch points and use that to try and optimize a company's resources, processes, and operations in order to ultimately improve the experience of not only the end customers, but also people within the business, and to streamline that whole process. But what makes good service design, you might ask? Because just because you've applied service design or human-centered design to something, it doesn't mean that it's going to be good. So what actually makes service design good service design? Well, there are a lot of criteria, but some of the main ones are that essentially, because it's a human-centered design practice, it needs to meet the needs of the end users, and it needs to deliver profit on the bottom line for the business. And it should do so in an ethical, and ideally nowadays in these times, in an environmentally friendly way. And that sounds fantastic, really nice and idealistic, high-level values that we should aspire to in a service design project. But in the real world, it's not always that easy. Often, it's actually quite tricky to meet all of those needs. And sometimes all the best that you can do is really act like the DJ and try to balance everything out, because sometimes there are compromises that need to be made, design trade-offs, just like in any design profession. So coming back to that example of public transport, that might be something like, for example, a public transport company following a service redesign. They might decide, great, we need a new ticketing technology, we're going to invest. But because they get a better price on a certain type of technology, it might mean they go with option A instead of option B. Option A is great, it does the job on the most part, but by implementing the new technology, the existing users lose out on a key feature that they used to rely on when they entered public transport. Everything else works, but they've lost out on something. So that's an example of a trade-off. And sometimes the best you can do is really to play DJ, really try to configure the right mix of all the things that go into the project, and think about it in the real world. What's better? Having ticket reading technology that is 90% good, or having none? So to finish up, the line, like I said, the line between service design and UX can get pretty blurry, and that's because they're both human-centered approaches and they both share a lot of common activities, like I said, like workshops, like customer interviews, or like prototyping. But there are a couple of differences, and the main difference is the service design approach really approaches problems from the high level across the organization. They work across physical, digital touch points and really try to optimize a business's resources, people, and processes in a way that ultimately benefits the end user's experience. The exciting thing about service design is being able to zoom into touch points, zoom out to the organizational level, co-design with stakeholders, work with them and end users to help deliver value on the bottom line for the business. And in today's world, trying to meet those increasing needs of a growing population, that kind of mindset for any sort of company will stand a lot of businesses in good stead going forward. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button. There's more videos coming. Until next time, rock and roll. Goodbye.